Is it good to play a side you have kind of played regularly over the last few years, or is it a bad thing in that it can breed contempt, so to speak?
No, I don't think it's a good thing for us. I mean, there's certainly not going to be any. I mean, I don't know who the contempt might come from. It's certainly not going to come from us. We've beaten them. We've beaten them once in the times we've been playing them. Thankfully, that was last season. It's not something we know we can't achieve. And it's probably quite good for us to face a new challenge and drop out of the Premiership for a little while. I think we've battled actually through the Premiership really well, and I actually think we're showing some pretty good qualities. And I think the Premiership is actually going to be, I think the results we've had and the way we've had the results will ultimately be very good for us, because there's only one way to go, which is you decide to roll your sleeves up and get on with things. And that's what we really need to show. We just need to show a little bit of doggedness and a little bit of determination to see a few things off, because that's all we're really lacking. Really, there's nothing huge there. As I've said before, a couple of kicks go differently, and we'd be sitting here near the top of the table, and we'd be thinking everything was tickety-boo, and we still had plenty to work on, and it was all going to be great. So, we're pretty comfortable where we are. But I think a nice little shift up in the challenge would be great. We all know Clermont are a very good side, and we're going to sit and we're going to watch the whole European picture unfold, and then we're going to play last thing on Sunday. And I think it's a fantastic challenge, and an evening kick-off here, under lights. It's going to be, it might be a bit wet and windy. It's going to be quite an interesting game.
And you look at the Clermont side. We can talk about the players they got, and they're packed with stars and what have you. But you've played against sides, not just Clermont, but you've played against other sides that are packed full of stars. Whether we talk about Saracens, we talk about Wasps. I guess there is not that kind of surprise in what you're going to expect now. You kind of know what to expect of certain. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be disappointed if we were shocked by the level of intensity or physicality or some of the things that might happen in the game, because that's why you gain experience. You do it season by season and week by week to learn these things. So we know it's a very important game. I mean, I think the key learn for me, the thing I'm most keen to see, is how we respond to our first performance last season. That would be the lesson I'd really want to see us learn. The lessons you learn week by week, yes, they have to come on board, but they're little steps that you have to be prepared to take day by day and week by week. We would like to think that the lesson we learned last season, because ultimately we lost the quarter-final, almost probably because we were away from home more than anything else. If you lose that close a game, things like being home or away are a big deciding factor, and that happened because we underperformed at Ospreys. And I've said to players, look, it's not talking about winning or losing, it's talking about the level of performance we put in. We knew we were disappointed at the Ospreys because we hadn't performed well. The winning and the losing, the getting the bonus points, whatever, they come on the back of something else. If Clermont come here and play exceptionally well and win, that's fine. But we've got to make sure we put our absolutely best performance that we're capable of on the field. That's what it has to be about, and that's the only thing we've spoken about. Is just let's make sure we're really comfortable with our level of performance. How we turn up, the way we play, and what we can say to each other once we get back in the changing room.
Does the fact that Clermont were beaten here last season, and effectively that kind of knocked them out of the Championship when you look at it, and Exeter managed to go through, and Clermont, to surprise of many, if not all onlookers, never made it to the knockout stages, having done so well in the previous year. Do you think they come here kind of with something to prove?
Yeah, but I think they would have something to prove here regardless of how last season went. They're a proud side, they've got a good history in the competition. And they'll have a lot to prove for themselves. They're going okay in the top 14, and I say they've got a history of getting out of their pool, so they'll understand how important the first round is, and the first two rounds are. These are the rounds that give you control over your destiny. And as I say, that's what we want to focus on. We kind of want to focus on ourselves, and we want to focus on the things we want to do and how we want to create a pathway for ourselves. And as I said, I think the boys have trained really well this week. We've trained quite in a reassuring way, in that it's not been just nice and comfortable and steady. We've actually made quite a few mistakes in training this week, but in the right way. We've made mistakes because we've trained at a high intensity. We haven't just got through training and it's looked nice and it's looked comfortable. Now today's session had quite a few mistakes in it. I don't have an issue with that, because it was flat out and it was very competitive. And I kind of think, if anything, that's probably what we need to really focus on going forward, because a little bit at the moment, quite a lot of our mistakes, quite a lot of our little errors are happening in games. We're giving up the ball a little bit too easily, we're turning over possession a little bit too easily. Some of our little errors, they're happening in games, and I think what we need to get a bit more comfortable with is that we train regularly at an intensity where the little errors maybe happen in training, but actually we're a lot more comfortable when it comes to game time, and that's the challenge we're going to have to face this week.